You should not make the same mistake I made. I built a life so strong nothing could get in. Turns out nothing could get out either. 102 years old, and that's the cleanest way I can say what I did to myself. Every decision I made was about keeping the bad things out. I saved every dime, I worked every hour, I planned every step, and I did it. I kept the bad things out, but I didn't notice that I had locked the door from the inside. Before I go on, I want to thank this channel for giving people like us a voice. Subscribe, it's free. Share your thoughts and stories in the comment section. My name is Arthur. I'm 102 years old. I was an architect for 45 years. I drew plans for a living. I made sure the foundation was solid. I made sure the roof wouldn't leak. I made sure the structure could survive anything. I was good at it. They gave me awards. They put my name on buildings downtown. You've probably walked past one. And I treated my life exactly the same way, like a building that needed to withstand a storm. But storms don't last forever, and neither do people. When I was your age, I thought the worst thing that could happen was losing what I had, so I held on to everything, tight. Money, time, love. I didn't spend it. I didn't give it away. I stored it, like it would earn interest, like I could save it for later and it would be worth more. It doesn't work that way. Let me tell you about my wife, Ruth. We were married for 61 years. She was the opposite of me. She was warm, she was loose, she laughed too loud, she gave away things we needed, she invited people over when the house was a mess. It drove me crazy. I'd come home from work and the kitchen would be full of neighbors. Ruth would be pouring wine we couldn't afford. I'd stand in the doorway and feel my jaw tighten. I'd look at the bills on the counter. I'd look at the wine in her hand, and I'd say, "Ruth, we can't afford this." She'd look at me with those eyes and say, "Arthur, we can't afford not to." I hated when she said that, because I was the responsible one. I was the one keeping us safe. I was the one making sure we didn't end up like my parents. My father lost everything in the Depression. Everything. I grew up with nothing. I swore that would never happen to me. So I became a man who counted everything. I knew the balance in our checking account to the penny. I knew how many shingles were on our roof. I knew the exact cost of every grocery trip, but I didn't know the names of half the people sitting in my kitchen. Ruth did. She knew their stories. She knew their kids. She knew who was sick, who was hurting, who needed a meal, who needed to laugh. She was building something too, but I didn't see it, because it didn't look like a structure. It didn't have a foundation. It didn't have walls. It was just people, moving, breathing, coming and going. It looked messy to me. It looked dangerous. It looked like something that could fall apart. So I stayed in my study. I drew my plans. I checked my numbers. And I let Ruth handle the messy part of being alive. There was a night in 1983, October. Ruth was in the hospital. Nothing serious, they said. Gallbladder. She needed a simple surgery. I went to the hospital the morning after. I brought her a bag with her toothbrush and a book. I set it on the table beside her bed. I asked the doctor about the procedure. I asked about recovery time. I asked about complications. The doctor answered everything. I nodded. I took notes on a small pad. Then I looked at Ruth. She was lying there, looking at me, and she said, "Arthur, sit down." I said, "I can't. I have a meeting at 2. She said, "Arthur, sit down." So I sat. She took my hand. Her hand was warm. I remember that. She said, "You have been to every appointment. You have talked to every doctor. You have read every file. But you have not asked me how I am." I didn't know what to say. She said, "You take care of the building, but you forget that someone lives inside it." They wheeled her away for surgery 20 minutes later. I sat in that chair for 3 hours, staring at the wall, because she was right. I took care of the building, but I forgot someone lived inside it. I did the same thing to my kids, Thomas and Claire. I paid for their school. I paid for their weddings. I bought their first cars. I did everything a father is supposed to do on paper. But I didn't go to their games, not because I didn't want to, because I was working, I was building, I was securing. I told myself I was doing it for them. That's the lie you tell yourself. I was doing it because I was afraid that if I stopped building, even for a Sunday afternoon, everything would collapse. My father's face in 1932, standing in line for bread. That's what I saw every time I thought about resting. So I didn't rest. I built. And my kids grew up in a house that was perfectly maintained and completely empty. Thomas is 72 now. Claire is 69. We have a fine relationship. Fine. That's the word he used last Christmas. We have a fine relationship, Dad. Fine. Not close, not warm, fine. Like a building that passes inspection. No violations, no problems, and no life inside it.
So here's what I want to say to you, and I'm not going to wrap it in a nice lesson. You are spending your days protecting a future that is not guaranteed. You are saving your love, your time, your energy, your warmth for some version of your life where everything is finally secure enough to let it out. That version doesn't exist. The storm you are preparing for, half of it is in your head, and the other half, you'll survive it the same way everyone does, by leaning on people, not by locking them out. The things you are holding on to so tightly, they are turning to dust in your hands. Money you didn't spend, time you didn't give, words you didn't say because the moment didn't feel efficient enough. Let go, not of responsibility, of the need to control. Open the door, let the mess in, let the people in, let the noise in. That's where the living happens, not in the structure, in the mess. My name is Arthur. I'm 102 years old. I designed buildings that will stand for another 100 years, and not one of them can hold a conversation. Not one of them can hold your hand when you're scared. If any of this sat with you, there are more of these conversations here. I'm not going anywhere yet. Subscribe if you want to hear them, before you go back to building your walls.